All right, everybody here except Mike?
That's correct.
Okay, so that's the roll call. And Joe, you want to lead off with the Pledge of Allegiance?
I will, thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we have minutes to approve.
I move to approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And we don't have any agenda changes, so I'll accept a motion to entertain a motion to accept the agenda.
Make a motion.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so celebrations. I think we have Alex and
Andy Trado.
Andy. Okay, right.
Andy's going to go first.
Okay, Andy.
Hey, thanks everybody. Just wanted to give an update on how our distance learning is going at the elementary school. We are in week 3 now and really making some positive strides in terms of taking the feedback that we've gotten from students and families and making some adjustments. Since the last time we talked, one of the things that we've successfully transitioned to is primarily the e-learning format for grades 5 and 6. So we started week 1 with everybody on a paper pencil model. 5th and 6th grade quickly moved to an e-learning format. 4th grade will be soon to follow with the target date of starting this next Monday, April 20th. We've had 2 separate sessions of passing out technology devices with the help of our IT department, and that's gone smoothly, and looking forward to continuing to move forward with that. With that, our teachers have done a great job of embracing that new learning. It's forced some of them to get out of their comfort zone, but they've really done a great job of using each other as resources, leaning on those that have more experience in those fields. And again, with the help of our 2 instructional coaches, as well as our director of curriculum and instruction, they've been huge assets in helping our teachers move forward. So we continue to meet with our teachers weekly. Our teachers continue to make daily contacts with students on a rotation so that they're at least making verbal or visual contact with every student at least once a week. Our social workers have a schedule as well where they're contacting students and reaching out to those that they've been working with. And so just doing everything we can to make sure we're meeting the needs of our students and families throughout the process. Our lunch program has been going really well. Our numbers have continued to grow each and every week, which means families are definitely taking advantage of that program. Our food service has done a great job. And additionally, as far as the elementary, our custodial staff continues to move forward with a lot of progress in light of, having an empty building to get a lot of work done. So all in all, a great team effort from the elementary perspective in moving things forward. We've also continued to collaborate with our junior senior high school. We worked at the end of last week to put together a parent family feedback survey that we're going to do one final review of tomorrow and hopefully get that out to families by the end of the day tomorrow, April 15th, to get some more concrete feedback in terms of how things are going, in terms of the communication, meeting family needs, student workload, as well as general comments that they have about the distance learning process. So that's a quick summary of how things are going. And I'd say all in all, under the circumstances, we're doing pretty well, and our staff has been great to work with and really embrace the challenges that this distance learning presents.
Thank you, Andy.
Any questions for Andy? Andy, by the way, was interviewed this morning by KEYC TV, and they'll probably show that tonight at the 6 and 10 o'clock news about distance learning. So we appreciate you doing that. If there's any other questions for Andy, otherwise I'm going to let him go. He has a family commitment at 5:30.
I have another question.
My grandparents are celebrating their 64th wedding anniversary today, And so we're driving out to the farm and doing a drive-by congratulatory parade to wave and hopefully bring a smile to their face. So that's why I'll be signing off here shortly.
I have a quick question. With the younger grades, I'm speaking more K or E through 4, a lot of the learning that goes on at home is dependent upon parent support and participation. How are we helping parents?
One of the things we're hearing from our teachers is our teachers are getting a lot of good questions when they're making those weekly contacts with parents. So they're using that as a guide to help them through it. Also, starting last week, we opened up a homework help hotline that we have available throughout the day. There are 3 different time chunks that we have for parents to call in, and we gave all parents that information a week ago. And then just at the end of last week, so now for this week, we've added a separate academic support line for our families that are with students that are still learning the English language. So we have an English language support, homework support hotline. So those are some of the things that we've done to open up the lines for parents to call in at various points of the day, where the older kids could call in, and then those teacher contacts as well. And then each of our grade levels has been assigned 2 to 3 additional paraprofessionals to help with that support as well. So they're also reaching out to families in addition to try to, again, add as much support as we possibly can.
I hope when this is all over, or maybe even before that, we can somehow let our families know how much we appreciate their support, because this couldn't happen without family support as well. And it really is a team effort. And I very, very much appreciate parents and families and friends stepping up to help these students, because there's no way a teacher could do this on their own, especially in the elementary level. So somehow I hope we can get that word out there, how appreciative we are to families for helping and being involved in their students' education.
Absolutely. And I don't think we could say thank you enough. You know, we do our weekly communicative dialers and we thank them every week in that. But, you know, the more we can do that and show our appreciation is, you're absolutely right, Nicole. That's important that we acknowledge that.
The other question I had was, when could we see the results of those surveys that you're looking at sending out? Will that week turnaround time or?
Yeah, we would definitely have them by the next board meeting.
Okay.
You know, we'll get them out. Like we said, we're going to review and make any final adjustments tomorrow at our administrative cabinet meeting, and then hopefully get that out to families late in the day tomorrow. So then that would give us really almost 2 weeks before the board meeting. But as soon as they're available, you know, with giving families a reasonable amount of time to respond, we can definitely share those results and what their thoughts are on how this is going.
I mean, we need those results, and I hope our public or our families know that to make the education process even better yet for our students. So very important.
For me, it's math, history, I think I did better in still.
Any other questions for Andy? And if you notice, Mike has joined us. I forgot to click on him apparently. Hi, Mike. We're just getting an overview from the elementary school. Do you have any questions for Andy before he takes off? He has a family commitment. Mike.
His mic is muted.
Can you hear me now? No, that's fine.
Okay. Well, thank you, Andy.
Yep, thank you,
Thank
Andy.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. TG? Jake?
Yes, Joe.
Are you gonna give us an update of what's going on at the high school?
Yeah, I can start, and then Alex, you can chime in. We've had more and more parents that have shared great success stories with their students and complimenting our teachers for the work that they've done. as we've gone on here. It has been a learning curve. That definitely is the case here. We've something that I have to report to the board that, you know, some of the feedback that we received from parents is that it was a little bit overwhelming at first. And I think that right there, I think is a compliment to our teachers. Our teachers took it, you know, very seriously, put a lot of effort into this, tried really hard to make this a genuine educational experience for our students. And I think that really, you know, that really shows the work that our teachers have put into this. So kudos to them. We have taken steps with that in mind, and that was great feedback from our parents. We have taken steps to help to make it a more pleasant experience for our students. What we've guided our teachers is to have 20 to 30 minutes of learning that's happening each day. The feedback that we've gotten from our students has been that is certainly more favorable, more manageable for them to be able to get through a school day. We had some students that were, some of the feedbacks they were spending, you know, 10 hours working on this work at home. And, you know, that just, you know, took us a little, you know, had to take a step back, had to reflect on this and make some adjustments to it. So, Alex?
Yeah, and you know, we're going to put that survey out starting tomorrow, but we already receive feedback, and I'm sure the elementary does too, just on a daily basis of things that we need to improve on, or worries, or just general comments. And one thing we did ask our staff to do as well, and anytime we ask our staff to do something because we've heard from parents or students, they respond quickly, they respond well. They put calendars on their websites of their weekly schedules, so students can see what is coming up throughout that week, and there's videos present. I do want to read an email that we received last Thursday. This was last Thursday in the morning. It's a parent. She has a senior and an 8th grader, and this is just kind of what she said. A very involved parent, but two very different students, she points out. But it says this is to Jake and I. Gentlemen, I want to tell you that your teachers are doing an amazing job with the current situation. They have risen to the challenge and are delivering great content and maintaining important connections with the students. That, I think, is a really big piece. We had some bumps along the way, but they have answered our questions and helped work out the kinks. They have been accessible when problems arise, and encouraging and helpful. At a time when the students need consistency, the staff is doing a world of good. Your staff is fantastic. Thank you for supporting them in all that they do. We appreciate the Fairmont Cardinal staff. Just very well put, very well written, and it represents our staff. When questions arise, they're right there to help kids. I was talking with a staff member midweek last week, and one comment that she made was, it's hard to keep those connections with your students on a personal level, like you do in the hallways and in the classrooms, but they're doing so many things to make sure those connections still exist. So again, couldn't speak more positively about our staff. So
yeah, I'm very excited to see the results from that survey as well. Some feedback that we've heard so far as well is there's been some confusion with multiple platforms with LMSs, learning management systems. We have some teachers that are using Moodle, some are using Schoology, some are using Google Classroom. So we have taken steps as an administrative team and purchased Schoology. So that's something that we'll be working on an implementation plan for that over the next few weeks. Hopefully in some capacity, we're able to continue with e-learning in the future. So I think that would be something that's very valuable. If it's something that through an e-learning process, if that is causing confusion with our kids, we know that during the school day that's causing confusion as well. So that's one other area that we're working on a solution to.
Any questions for Jake or Alex? All righty, let's move on. Rufus, you're still there, right?
Yeah.
Your
I don't see
video,
my pitch. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but your video went away.
Let me try to stop and start it again.
Okay.
While we're waiting, I have one quick question.
Yeah, Dan.
Did Midco help out getting students that needed internet access? Have we got everybody taken care of?
Yeah, we have most of our students. For 818 students that we have in our building right now, we have right now on Fridays or the last day of the week, we're delivering paper pencil. And I think this last Thursday we delivered 8 bags. We have large Ziploc bags that we deliver to families. So out of the 818, there's 8 families that we're delivering paper pencil materials to. I would add that another success for the high school's attendance has been really, really good. We've been, in that ballpark of 18, 20 kids that have been absent in a given day, and that's even better attendance than what we've had in a regular school day. So that's been really successful that our kids are tuning in. They're online, and then those for the very few that do not have the capabilities, we have the paper pencil option. But I would add to this that Midco, we could not have made that happen without Midco. They were extremely
Absolutely.
helpful for us to be able to provide the internet to the families that did not have it.
And very prompt. They were, we asked, they responded, and even without asking, they were on it, and students had internet within the next day. So very appreciative of them.
Okay.
Did you click that?
Well, Rufus, if you don't mind, we'll go ahead with.
I'm going to leave the meeting and come back on and see if I can fix it.
Okay. I'm going to touch on 3 things. I'm going to, first of all, just talk about the enrollment report, which I think Judy sent out a copy for you today. But we're down just 4 students from where we were about 3 weeks ago. Down 3 students at the high school and down 1 at the elementary. That means we're down 4 students. Yep, that makes sense. Some of the high school students that have left are some of our new to country students. They've either left or they've dropped out. But the enrollment is still pretty strong at 1,655. I want to see if Rufus can hear us. Can you hear us, Rufus?
Yep.
Okay, if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead. Is that okay?
Go ahead.
Okay, I want to touch on 2 things tonight, board. And, I really do respect our committee process, our operations committee, and also our staff welfare committee. And because it's hard for us to meet, I want to talk about 2 things. One is the school resource officer contract. As you know, that's up for renewal this year. It's a 3-year contract. And I've been sharing with you emails between myself and Chief Mike Hunter. And originally, they gave us a copy of the contract that they have at Arise Academy, and it was $1 amount per hour. And when I costed that out, it looked like they were going to charge us a 50% increase. And so I got a hold of Mike and I asked him 2 things. One, really insisted that when we do the final contract, which if the board gives me permission to go ahead and finalize that tonight, then I'll bring that back to the board for your approval on the 28th. But there's 2 things that we really wanted. Number one, we want to make sure that the school resource officer is available at the high school from 7:30 in the morning to 3:30. And even though that's different than the police contract that they have with the city, Chief Hunter said that that would be fine. And then second of all, I had proposed a 5% increase each year rather than a 50% increase all at once. I proposed a 5% increase. And Mike, Chief Hunter countered that and upped it just a little bit, but I thought it was reasonable. And Chris Muvick and I have looked at it and we felt those numbers were okay. And we can use safe school money, levy money to pay for the school resource officer. And I think everybody agrees that we still want to keep a school resource officer. And if you notice the emails that have gone back and forth with Chief Hunter and myself, the city police department does appreciate the close collaboration they have with both of our buildings, and they want to maintain that. So I'm open to suggestions or comments from the board, but what I'm looking for tonight is simply guidance to go ahead and finalize this contract and then bring back a final contract for the board to approve at our next meeting on April 28th. I'll stop there for comments.
I support that.
I do as well.
I have a couple of questions. One, I want to make sure that the school resource officer, whatever this contract says, that it is the position gives our school the most benefit, and how the time is spent at the school is gives us the most benefit for our students, for their safety. And you know, it's not supposed to be a punitive position. It's supposed to be a resource position. And I just want to make sure that that's how it is going to be handled. I was involved with the original negotiation for the contract fee or price, and I honestly don't remember a lot about it because it was a while ago, but I was a little shocked at the amount that they now were originally seeking or suggesting, if we compared it to the Arise Academy's original costs or costs that they have now. And so I wish that I could remember what our, and I didn't keep the notes from it, what our reasoning was behind what we agreed to pay versus the city agreed to pay. I don't remember that. Do you remember that, Joe?
I do. 3 years ago, the estimated cost of having a police officer was $100,000. And so they wanted us to split that cost 50-50. And I will say, compared to other schools in our region, like I think it was Blue Earth has to pay 75% of the cost, and the city or county pays 25. But the 50-50 agreement, I thought was a pretty good agreement 3 years ago. And the $100,000 was the estimated cost of the total cost of one police officer. That was not only his or her salary, benefits, car, ammunition, training, gasoline, the total cost. And now 3 years have passed. That was a set cost of $50,000, and I think going to approximately about a 6% increase each year for the next 3 years is probably appropriate.
Is it still about 50% of the total cost of what a police officer is?
Yes, it will be, because their costs have also gone up. Yep.
Well, I think a school resource officer is very valuable. I think it can establish great relationships with our students and help them learn what being a good citizen is. I think it's a very good position. I just want to make sure that the principals have input to what they'd like to see happen with that position, because they're the ones, and probably our school social workers too. They're the ones who really see how that position works and where we might need to tweak things or change things. So I just like to make sure that they're involved and that they think it's a good relationship between both parties.
And Nicole, we do have a cabinet meeting tomorrow. And so I'll bring the proposed contract to the principals to take a look at and have them, I'll make copies for all of them, and we can review that tomorrow and see if there's anything else we want to tweak before we bring back an official version in 2 weeks.
Okay, sounds good.
Anybody
Are
else?
we looking at the same officer as last year?
Yes.
Okay.
He's very interested in continuing in that position. And the 2 principals of the high school, he would basically serve mostly at the high school. Were you 2 satisfied last year with the officer we had?
He started in at November. I think we were in a transition, so that was part of the year. I think our current officer has plans for doing more. He is a very involved officer with students. I think he's at every single lunch that we have at the high school, getting to know students. His goal is to get to know as many students personally as he possibly can, communicating to kids that his door is always open for questions and for anything that they need. And he works very closely, obviously, with our dean of students and our social worker. So Jake, you want to speak a little bit more? Kind of, we do have a vision for how we want to use the school resource officer. So
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is he does connect with kids outside of school as well. You see him at extracurricular activities frequently, so it's a nice thing as well. I did gather some resources from school resource officer in a neighboring district, a job description over the course of the school year, what that school resource officer accomplishes. Was a nice resource for us to be able to look at and see, what, and that was a established, experienced school resource officer. So nice to use that to be able to guide him through his process as he continues to grow in that position.
Who does he report to?
Who does he report? He reports to Chief Hunter.
Right.
Um,
He does frequent check-ins with Jake and myself. So it's not an official check-in, but he does report to his chief.
And I'm not surprised, Joe, that you were able to work with Mike. Chief Hunter's a good guy, and I think the negotiations you shared with us were all very transparent and reasonable. So I'm not surprised by that. And is it Shannon Bass? Is he the resource officer?
yes.
And relatively new in role. Obviously, didn't even get a full year in because of starting late in this COVID situation. I think I won't say concern. I think and you're going to talk about tomorrow at cabinet. Be very clear with what our expectations are. I mean, if he doesn't work for us, he works for Fairmont PD. We have him here because it brings value to the educational process and to our student quality of life. But they're also law enforcement, right? And they're not there to in the same capacity they would be if they're out on patrol at 11 o'clock on a Friday night. And I think the Officer Bass understands that very well. But when we're putting together the details, if I recall, I don't have it in front of me, I'm sorry, but in the previous contract, there was something about updates to the board. I think that needs to be in there. And then we also need to make sure that happens. He should be in front of the board, probably, I'd say at least twice a year, once in the fall, once in the spring, to say, here's some education initiatives that I brought to the school from my, learnings and specific trainings as a resource officer, and to update us on what is happening, and the community at large. Frankly, they have a right to understand the nature of that relationship. And connecting into that is, I have an expectation is that his training and experience needs to also be focused on serving in a school. And I understand, and I'm assuming that it would continue to be that. But I think as a board, we should have an expectation that there's continuing education on best practices for that. So don't be, when you look at the old contract and the new one, incorporate that stuff in there, and don't be shy about how you want, with that vision you guys spoke about, how you want to use it. And then make sure you get the elementary school involved too, because I think, we go through 6th grade at the elementary school, and as sad as it is to say, we have many 6th graders and even 5th graders that have had a number of interactions with law enforcement and in a not positive situation. And so I want to make sure that we are dedicating some time to the elementary school as well, so those relationships can start at a younger age. And I'm assuming that Shannon would do that, and I know Chief Hunter would be supportive of that. So just make sure we're clear with expectations, so we can make sure that we are doing what we expect, and if it's not what we want, we change it later. So I'll let you guys drive that, because you're the ones that are going to have that relationship, and I'll approve whatever it is that you guys want to do with that. But that's just kind of my feedback, both as a board member, but also obviously as someone that works in the criminal justice system. This is kind of a weird dual hat situation, and for our end, we should emphasize the relationship building and safe environment hat, and less so the enforcement hat. And I think luckily that's where we've been the last several months with what we got right now.
I appreciate those comments, Mike, and I will make sure those get included. That's a great idea. I like the idea of at least semi-annual reports. And I will point out also that Officer Bass, I've seen him more in the elementary this year than I've seen any other previous school resource officer. And when he's in the elementary, he always stops in the office and chats with me. And, you know, we walk the halls together, and he's just he's a great, and in addition to that too, and I wish we had the elementary principals online to verify this, but the number of police officers that we have, they do adopt elementary classrooms, and they do come in frequently and read to the kids and talk to the kids. And it's just, we just have such a nice, wonderful relationship. I took a phone call at 4 o'clock today from one of the 5 semi-finalists, if you will, of the city administrator. One of the 5 people that is thinking about, or is one of the 5 people that's been selected to come, and he called just to check and see what relationship the school has with the city. And of course, I spoke very highly, and we just have a great relationship with the city and law enforcement in the county. So anyway, go ahead, Julie. Oh, anybody? So I'll go ahead and we'll tweak that over the next few days, and I'll make sure we get confirmation from the city, and then we'll move ahead with, hopefully we'll be able to, my goal is to bring that back because the contract is run out in June.
And that contract, like the specifics they were talking about, getting input from the principals is important, because regardless of who the SRO officer is, we have certain expectations. And Shannon's done a great job, but we have had turnover in the past 2 years. And so regardless of who steps into that position, the expectations should be the same. And it should be very clear what we as a district want with that relationship. So thank you for putting that together.
Okay, I'm going to switch topics. I also sent the board for your review the proposal that Chris and I have been working on with the long-term facility bond. And I sent that information out because what I'd like to do is talk about that a little bit tonight. I'm not asking for a vote tonight, but I'd like to get approval to move ahead with Ellers, which is our consulting firm that we work with our bond, to go ahead and put the documents together and bring those back to the school board for your review and hopeful approval next meeting. And specifically, I'll just give you the summary of how this works. Currently, we can generate X amount of dollars for our long-term facility maintenance. We can generate about $482,000 a year. Some of that is levy and some of that is state aid. And but we have a whole list of things that Tyler Garrison has put together. These are kind of our top priorities of things we need to get done in the next year or two. We have many roofs to replace or restore. We have the visitor bleachers on the football stadium. The science classroom in the high school needs to be revamped. And we have a gym, annex gym ceiling replacement. Anyway, bottom line is he came up with approximately $2 million worth of projects that we would like to get done in the next year or two. And the way this works is we can take a look at what we would generate over the next 10 years, and we can actually get a bond. Now, 5 or 6 weeks ago, when Chris and I were looking at this, the interest rates were, what, 5% back then, Chris? And now they're 2%. So we can get 2% money. And so it's just a great time. We also think it's a great time to do this because the contractors are hungry. And we think if we can get contractors back to work this summer and next summer, we have 3 years after the school board approves this, we have 3 years to complete the projects that are listed. And of course, we need to resurface the tennis courts every 5 years. We want to upgrade the locker rooms in the high school. Seal coating needs to be done. These are all projects that will make our school system really good to go for the next decade. But we can get this done now when the contractors are hungry and when interest rates are low. So I'll stop there and try to yield any questions. Otherwise, Chris could answer questions too. But I want to get your feedback to see if we should move ahead with this. And if so, I will pursue this.
I support it, Joe.
Thank you, Rufus.
I do as well.
Myri?
Yeah, I think it's very worthwhile to pursue.
Mike, can I share your concerns initially?
Yeah, I guess the only,
Yeah.
I think it's borderline no-brainer in terms of the accounting financing part of it. I did have questions about if we were locked into the projects at the beginning, and then we would have inflexibility. And while I understand, and I've talked about this with some of you, we have some investment needs in the infrastructure of our football field visitor bleachers, I'm not sure I have enough information to say I'd want to commit to $250,000 on that project, and that was on that list. And so if we're not locked into doing that, then I have pretty much no reservations. But if we're going to be locked in to spend that amount on that project, I would want a little bit more information. So I'm not really sure how that works. It seems to me that they wouldn't want you to lock in necessarily to the what, but probably the amounts. But Joe, I don't know if we got an answer on that.
Chris?
I guess the answer for me would be the unusual part about this package is it's multiple smaller packages of projects, where normally you would do this with one big project like the PAC project or our lighting. So that's the unusual piece about this bond issue, compared to how you would normally do it. But I can always ask MD too for clarification on how much flexibility we would have with the projects. So I'll clarify that with MDE.
The other question, Chris, is like, most of it's for the roof projects, which I think everyone would agree is a necessary and important expense. What if we're wrong and we over budgeted and we have 200,000 left over? Can we still use it under this plan, or do we have to are we not allowed to? I mean, and some of that stuff we won't know until we get into it. I'm just kind of curious, so we can maybe manage our own expectations, and then when we communicate to our constituents, we can, the best we can, at least let them know how it's going to work.
I can get clarification on that.
Sure.
And the main thing is to remember is that this is not a tax increase. We are simply getting revenue up front for the taxes we're going to levy anyway. And so it just seems to be like a good time to do this. I did, when Mike contacted me about the football bleachers, the current football bleachers, they are technically safe. However, they're not handicapped accessible. There's no railings on that side. And,
Joe?
Yes?
Can you clarify, you're talking about the visitors bleachers?
The visitors bleachers. Okay. Right, thank you. The visitors bleachers on the football stadium, they're not handicapped accessible. And we've had some complaints. Every year I get complaints about that. There's no railings, so when you actually go up the stairs, we have an elderly population in our region and they like railings. And once you start putting railings up, then you have to make them handicap accessible. And then also the press box over there is pretty inadequate, pretty unsafe. And this proposal would actually create a new press box for the opposing team, for their coaches to be over there, and the media from the opposing teams. Right now, those folks are in our press box, and that sometimes is uncomfortable for coaching positions. But it's one of those projects, by the way, that's been on the burner for the last 3 to 4 years, and we keep moving it back because of the priorities of the roofs. And so, Mike, your point's well taken. The roofs take top priority because we don't want any leakage or any mold into the school. But it's probably a good time to get this done. The last thing I'll mention is that Stadium Steve is a company that pretty much has the regional area. They're the company that does these bleachers. And it'd be nice to actually be able to do that this summer. The downside of that, they can't get any product right now because the companies that make the product are shut down because of the COVID-19. But we can get on a list and be the first ones up to have the project done in the summer of 21. And so it's important to get a commitment. So we'll go ahead and get those questions answered for you, Mike, and board members. And then I'll send that to you between now and next week so that you can have a week to think about it. And then we'll, if it all works out well, we'll bring it to the board for a full vote on the 28th. So then we can move ahead. Is that okay?
Okay.
Okay, we're back to donations now. Rufus,
Before I get to that, Joe, I just had a quick question. Joe, I had a quick question about the bond issue. Does that preclude us then from doing anything in the future with any other building facility bonds or anything like that? Just out of curiosity, if we're asked to contribute to the hockey arena, for example, would that preclude us from, if we go ahead and do this, would that shut us out of being able to put any money into that or any other project that might come up with that?
No, a district's allowed to levy $380 per pupil unit, which for us is about $700,000 a year. So we're taking about 200,000 of that, 300,000 of that, and shifting that to a bond. We could issue another bond in a year if we wanted to. We could go and issue $700,000 a year worth of bonds if we wanted to. So you could structure it however you want. Multiple bigger districts, multiple schools have multiple different bonds. Kind of however a district wants to structure their facilities.
Just so long as we have the flexibility.
Yep.
Okay, Dan, you want to do donations?
We have 2 donations. I would move to accept these donations as provided in Minnesota statutes. We have one from the Math Counts Foundation for $150 for Fairmont High School Math Counts team. And we have one from Charities Aid Foundation of America for $38.80 for the Cardinal Activity Fund. And I move that we accept those donations.
You have a
I'll
second?
Julie?
Okay, we'll do a roll call. Mike?
Yes.
Dan?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Nicole?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Mari?
Aye.
Okay. I think that's it.
Yes.
Yep.
And then Chris, finances?
I'll start with the transfers and wires. Fairly normal month, half a month, I guess, with normal payroll expenses. The one payment I'm going to review is on March 26th for about $76,000. That was federal reimbursements for our title programs. I'm going to shift to the payment register. One check I'm going to review today is check number 63974 to Alpha Wireless Communications for $48,508. That is for security cameras here at the elementary school, servers and different cameras, upgrades. Should have a single check wires or single check register as well. That was primarily for speech judges. That's all I have for you guys.
Okay.
Hey, Julie?
Any questions or anything anybody has of Chris of these bills? If not, I'd make a motion to approve the wire transfers for March 20th, 2020 to April 9th, 2020, the March 2020 single checks and payment of the April 14th, 2020 bills.
Second that.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you, Julie. We have no old business. We have some new business. Mike? The MOU? You there, Mike?
I am. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm gonna bring it up here on my screen. All right, so this is the what's it called? EMF, yeah. So essentially, this is a change to the union contract, where it's a memorandum of understanding regarding language related to retiree health and hospitalization. I think our current language requires them to have been retired for a period of time prior to them collecting their basically their pension, and it really shouldn't make any difference to us whether or not they are collecting their pension or not. And by having that language in there, it messes up their post-employment retirement health insurance. And so we are fixing that clause because it's basically, we're fixing it by removing it, Joe, right? I mean, it's not necessary is essentially the short version of it.
That is correct. And we have some teachers that have been with us over 20 years. And if they do decide to retire from teaching, under the current contract, the only way they would get their post-employment health insurance is if they are collecting their teacher retirement annuity retirement funds. And if you're under the age of 62 and you retire at a younger age, you could really take a penalty hit on your TRA. So we have teachers that are interested in retiring, but not yet interested in taking their TRA until they get to be age appropriate. And so this has no financial impact on us at all. But if somebody does decide to retire after 20 years experience, we would pay for their 7 years of health insurance like we do anybody. And it really shouldn't matter to us whether they take their TRA or not. We don't care when people take their Social Security. We don't care whether they take their TRA. We simply aren't going to be paying into that anymore once they retire. So you're correct, Mike.
So I without getting too into the weeds, I think I can see where this language comes from, and I think I can see why that is there. But because it's become a barrier for some of our staff, and that is not the intention, I would recommend that I make a motion to remove that clause from the contract by way of the MOU that is closed. I believe it's Appendix B as in boy.
Second.
Okay, any other questions?
Is that just for this contract year? Right, okay, I see, and then they'll negotiate it again next time negotiations come up, right?
Yeah,
The
actually,
MOU is just for this, for the 19 to
For this
21 contract.
For the existing contract.
once that's taken out of the contract, it will be out of the contract.
Right, and that contract, though, expires in 2 years?
One more year, Mike, after this. Yep.
And
then we would-
presumably it would not then be in the next contract.
That is correct.
Well, the MOU says it'll need to be negotiated into the 21-23 contract.
Yes, and that's standard language.
Yep.
Yep.
Any other questions? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. We have no personnel, no board reports. Any other topics, issues, questions?
I'll just add one more thing. We have a third grade opening with the retirement of Mrs. Wieselman. And this year, the school district, we signed up with a company called AppleTrack. And AppleTrack is a software package that most schools use across the state of Minnesota, so that when a teacher applies on AppleTrack, once they apply once, they can send that application out to multiple schools. It makes it easier to get applications, and they're totally complete. And as of yesterday, we received 15 applications for the third grade position, which is really incredible. Because if you remember, a few years ago, we had a fifth grade opening and we only had 3 apps. Actually, we had multiple openings and we only had 3 apps. And so it looks like more kids are going through school now, and Andy and Michelle are going through those 15 apps, calling references already prior to bringing somebody probably on a Zoom interview, but it's very refreshing that many kids, young folks, I should say, would like to come here and teach. Yeah.
Is that all we're looking for is openings for next year? Is the third grade opening? Or is there other openings looking up?
Well, remember, we had the opening with Mrs. Coppin retiring from the elementary art, and we've already filled that position. With Jeff Nauman retiring at the high school, we're moving Mrs. Satterson from 6th grade over to the high school to teach economics, because we only need 5 sections of 6th grade next year rather than 6. Yep. I think I do know this. I've written some letters of recommendation for other teachers. I think some of our principals have. There might be some movement, and the cabinet they don't want me to ever say we only have 2 or 3 openings, because that's when we end up with 14. So at this point, as of today, Julie, that's the only one, that's the only opening that we actually have.
Okay, good.
Okay, anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay,
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you, everybody.
thank you, board. Have a good week.
Thank you.